Are you tired of the constant performance, the quiet ache of a life that doesn't quite feel like your own? Welcome to Fearless Thoughts, where we explore the courage to shed the masks and step into your most authentic self. Today, we delve into a profound transformation, what truly happens when you stop seeking approval and begin to live your fearless truth. What truly happens when you begin to live your truth, not the kind of truth that is spoken for approval, nor the version curated for comfort, but the deeper, quieter truth that lives beneath the masks. The answer, Carl Jung would say, does not come in the form of a sudden declaration. It does not arrive with fanfare or dramatic upheaval. It begins in silence. It begins the moment the soul, long buried beneath layers of adaptation, begins to stir, not out of ambition, but from sheer exhaustion. You do not choose this awakening, it chooses you, often when the roles you've played begin to fracture under their own weight. Jung taught that the truth of the self is not something we create. It is something we remember, but we only begin to remember when we are too tired to keep pretending, when the performance has gone on too long, and the applause no longer fills the emptiness. This is not a glamorous process. It is not a linear one. It is more like a quiet erosion of everything that was never truly yours, the friendships that no longer nourish you, the career that once defined you now feels like a cage. The persona once your greatest protection becomes a prison. And in that moment of quiet collapse, something ancient begins to emerge. Living from your truth is not an act of rebellion, it is an act of return, a homecoming to the self you lost while trying to survive. Jung would say this shift is not a crisis, it is a correction, a reorientation from the outer noise toward the inner voice that was always there, whispering beneath the expectations and the noise. This is what happens when you begin to live your truth. You stop running, you stop performing, you stop abandoning yourself to please a world that was never designed to understand your soul. And in that stillness, something opens, not through force, not through effort, but because the soul at last has permission to speak. And when it speaks, your real life begins. This fearless step towards authenticity is what we champion here at Fearless Thought. The awakening does not arrive with fanfare. It is not an announcement, nor a sudden bolt of enlightenment. It begins instead with something far more intimate, a quiet dissonance within, a whisper that arises when your outer life drifts too far from your inner truth. One day, you find yourself in the middle of a conversation, a commitment or a performance, and something in you simply refuses to go along. You smile, but the smile feels brittle. You nod, but your chest tightens. The familiar mask begins to itch, and you realize you can no longer wear it without cost. Not because you have grown rebellious, but because your soul has grown weary of the lie. Jung understood this moment as the early stirring of individuation, the sacred call back to the self. The process does not begin with radical change, but with sacred discomfort. It starts the moment you realize that pretending has become more exhausting than honest living. And that is the paradox of awakening. You do not will it. It happens when you are too tired to continue living a half-truth. You wake up one morning and can no longer force yourself to say yes when every cell in your body screams no. Your mouth smiles out of habit, but your soul trembles in protest. The shift is small at first, almost invisible to the outside world, but internally tectonic plates begin to move. This is the birth of a new consciousness, not the kind you read in books, but the kind you feel deep in your bones. You start noticing which people drain your energy, which environments dull your spirit, which roles feel more like cages than home. You find yourself sitting in rooms that once thrilled you and now feel foreign. You replay conversations and realize how often you've edited yourself just to keep the peace. Where you once said yes to avoid guilt, you now pause. Where you once endured discomfort for the sake of approval, you now feel an ache that will not be dismissed. And then it happens. The refusal. Not loud, not violent, sacred. A refusal to keep betraying yourself just to belong. You decline a dinner you used to attend out of obligation. You walk away from a friendship that feels more like performance than connection. You stop explaining your decisions to people committed to misunderstanding you. These refusals are not acts of defiance. They are acts of remembrance. You are beginning to remember who you were before the world trained you to perform. Jung taught that the self cannot emerge until the persona cracks. The persona, the mask we wear to function in society, is necessary. But when it becomes fused with our identity, we forget that beneath it lives something far more ancient and real. The small refusals are how the true self begins to reclaim space. You stop performing happiness and start listening to your sorrow. You stop chasing approval and start honoring resonance. That inexplicable sense that something aligns or does not, and that resonance becomes your compass. You begin to walk through life not faster, but freer. You no longer force your way forward. You feel your way inward. And this is how transformation begins. Not with declarations or revolutions, but with these small, holy shifts. The shift from should to want, from tolerance to truth, from pretending to present. You stop performing the version they needed you to be and start remembering the self you were before you had to hide. This is not selfish, it is sacred, because every time you honor what is real within you, you make space for others to do the same. And in a world of noise and masks, one quiet act of truth becomes a light, a guide, a beginning. This journey of cracking the persona is a core theme we explore here at Fearless Thoughts, providing insights and strategies for navigating this often challenging process. To live your truth is not to shout it across rooftops, or demand the world bow to your awakening. It is a quieter, more sacred unfolding, a soft but firm return to your center. It is no longer about convincing others of who you are. It is about embodying that knowing so deeply that it shapes your very presence. This is not performance. This is alignment. You begin to notice it in the subtlest places, the cadence of your voice, no longer reaching to be heard, the stillness in your eyes, no longer seeking permission, the way your body relaxes when you finally stop betraying it in the name of fitting in. Carl Jung taught that true transformation arises not from the noise of assertion, but from the silence of inner recognition. The revolution that begins within you does not announce itself with grand gestures or sweeping declarations. It shows itself in your choice. You begin to choose peace over performance, boundaries over approval, clarity over comfort. It is the subtle refusal to shrink, to explain, to prove. You no longer need to be understood because you understand yourself. Your soul, long exiled behind roles and expectations, steps forward not as an argument, but as a presence. You no longer ask the world to validate your worth. You live, and in this living, something profound occurs, a quiet internal revolution, one that is almost invisible from the outside, but unmistakable from within. It is not dramatic, it does not hunger for witnesses. It simply moves like an underground spring, reshaping your landscape from below. Where once you reacted, now you respond. Where once you chased approval, now you listen to intuition. The world may see the same face, the same name, the same routine, but within you, the axis has shifted. The compass no longer points out. It turns inward, guided not by fear or conditioning, but by resonance, the deep yes that rises from the soul. And something beautiful happens. Solitude, once feared as exile, becomes sanctuary. You no longer dread the silence, because it no longer echoes with abandonment. It hums with your own voice. You begin to realize that being alone and being disconnected are not the same. You may lose people, you may outgrow places, you may be misunderstood, but the loss feels clean now, no longer a tearing, but a shedding. You are not becoming less, you are becoming real. This is the essence of individuation, not a severing from the world, but a re-entry into it as someone whole. The quiet revolution within you begins to shape your outer life, the way you love, the way you work, the way you rest. Even your presence becomes different. People may not be able to name it, but they feel it. Something in you has settled. Something in you no longer flinches. And perhaps that is the most powerful thing of all. You stop fearing the cost of being who you are. You stop abandoning yourself in the name of peace, because you have discovered something far more sacred than belonging to others, belonging to yourself. This is not pride. It is humility before your own soul. And from this place, you live not to perform, not to persuade, but to be fully, quietly, unapologetically real. At Fearless Thoughts, we believe in the power of this quiet revolution. and we provide a space for you to explore and embrace your authentic self, without reservation. As you begin to live from your truth, a quiet purification unfolds within and around you. What once felt ambiguous becomes unmistakably clear. Your inner compass, once clouded by noise and expectation, begins to align with something deeper, your essence. You feel it not as a loud proclamation, but as a subtle shift in the body, in the soul. Jung taught that we do not awaken through light alone, but by bringing consciousness into the dark. And that is what this process is, a sacred integration of all you are and all you have hidden. Not rejection, not resistance, but reclamation. Suddenly you notice that what once passed unnoticed now feels like static. Conversations that once animated you feel rehearsed. Interactions you used to tolerate begin to drain your spirit. Your nervous system becomes a sensitive instrument, tuned no longer to outer approval, but to inner resonance. You feel when something is off. You sense when energy is false. You discern without needing to justify. This sensitivity is not a weakness. It is wisdom. You stop chasing what sparkles and start honoring what speaks. You no longer look for validation to prove your value. You begin to live your worth instead. It is not something you seek. It is something you radiate. Your steps become more intentional. Your boundaries are clearer. Your voice is steadier. And all of this begins to reconfigure the world around you. Some relationships deepen because they are finally built on truth. There is no longer the need to pretend, to perform, to edit yourself, for accept. You arrive whole, and those who meet you there do so because they have also chosen the truth. Others, however, begin to fade, not through conflict, but through quiet misalignment. They can no longer find the old version of you, and so they retreat. This is not rejection. It is life making space for those who speak your new language of being. And while it may ache to feel people fall away, you begin to understand something profound. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to be fully yourself. Your energy becomes sacred currents. You no longer give it indiscriminately. You no longer apologize for what feels right. There is a kind of peace that comes when you stop explaining and simply embody. That peace does not shout. It does not beg to be seen. It lives in your silences, in your breath, in the quiet dignity of someone who has come home to themselves. You begin to notice this shift in the smallest places, in how you hold yourself after disappointment, in how you sit with your own presence, without reaching for distraction, in the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening. That is the revolution, the subtle but powerful transformation that reshapes not only your inner life but everything around you. Because when you live your truth, you no longer cling to what has expired. You no longer serve routines that keep you. You do not negotiate with fear just to maintain the illusion of stability. You let go. You allow the shedding. And in that surrender you find freedom. Not the fleeting freedom of rebellion, but the enduring freedom of alignment. This is not about comfort. It is about coherence. The body breathes easier. The mind grows quieter. The soul feels seen. And so your life, piece by piece, becomes simpler but richer, lighter but deeper. Not because the world changed, but because you. And in that transformation you discover what you always knew. That the most profound shift is not in what we do, but in who we choose to be. And that choice, once made, ripples through everything. We at Fearless Thoughts understand that this purification process can be both liberating and challenging, and we offer guidance and support to help you navigate these transformative. When the soul begins to live in coherence with itself, life no longer hums with the static of inner contradiction. A rhythm emerges, not imposed, not borrowed, but ancient and deeply personal. It is the music of your essence, reclaiming its place, and with it, the war within begins to quiet. The old battle between what you should do and what you truly feel begins to dissolve. Not through force, but through understanding. You are no longer split between the demands of the outer world and the whispering truth of the inner one. You begin to move from unity. This, Jung would say, is the moment the self starts to speak more loudly than the persona. You stop chasing peace as if it was something outside you. Instead, peace begins to live in your bones. Not because your life has become perfect, but because your inner world is no longer at war. The decisions that once caused anguish now carry a strange simplicity. Not because they are easy, but because they are honest. The mind no longer pulls in one direction, while the heart cries out in another. There is clarity, there is congruence, and that clarity begins to shape your every movement. You speak more slowly, more thoughtfully. You listen not only to words but to energy, to what is not said. Your presence becomes its own form of discernment. From this coherence rises a new form of strength, not hard, not armored, but rooted. You set boundaries not as a punishment, but as an honoring of what is sacred within. You say no without apology. You walk away without guilt. You no longer contort yourself to fit places where your soul does not feel welcome. And this is not rebellion. It is a remembrance. You begin to remember who you were before fear taught you to shrink. This shift is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is subtle but undeniable. You laugh differently. You breathe more deeply. The heaviness that once clung to your chest begins to lift, not because your circumstances have changed, but because your relationship to yourself has. You are no longer betraying the truth within you, and that loyalty to self is a quiet revolution. You no longer rush through your days, searching for a destination that will make you feel whole. You begin to realize that wholeness was never a place to arrive at. It is a state of being you cultivate with every honest step, every aligned decision, every moment of stillness, where you refuse to abandon yourself. Others will feel this. Some will draw near, magnetized by the calm you now carry. Others will fall away, unable to recognize the new frequency you now inhabit. And you let them go, not with resentment, but with grace, because you no longer need to be understood by everyone. You only need to be faithful to yourself. The world's approval begins to lose its power over you. Your inner compass has grown louder than the noise outside, and in that silence, you find power. Carl Jung once said that only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life. Living from your truth is that paradox. It is not about becoming someone new. It is about unlearning the noise, the roles, the masks, until what remains is you, untamed, undivided, enough. From this space, your life begins to unfold in unexpected ways, not faster, not flashier, but fuller. Each breath is no longer a means to an end. It is the destination itself. Presence replaces urgency, intuition replaces approval, and peace becomes your natural homecoming. This is what it means to stop running from yourself, to sit at the center of your own being and trust that you are not late, you are not lost, you are right on time. The truth has always been waiting, not to be chased but to be remembered. At Fearless Thoughts, we provide the tools and insights to help you cultivate this inner coherence, guiding you toward a life of authenticity and profound personal peace. To live from your truth does not mean life becomes flawless, or the questions cease. It means you no longer bear the suffocating burden of pretending to be someone you are not. To masks fall, not with a dramatic crash, but with a quiet reverence, as if the soul has finally been granted permission to breathe. You allow yourself space to evolve, to err, to soften. Perfection is no longer your currency. Presence, and in that presence, you discover the most profound peace, the serenity of walking in alignment with your inner world, even when the outer world does not understand. This alignment becomes your sanctuary, a sacred home within, untouched by circumstance or noise. You return to it again and again, not as an escape, but as a grounding. No longer do you seek shelter in people, distractions, or illusions. You become the sanctuary you were always searching for, and this changes everything. You begin to see with clearer eyes, to feel with an unguarded heart. You stop idealizing the things that once harmed you, and start responding to life from a place of soulful discernment. You no longer chase what glitters, you move only toward what resonates. The intuition you once dismissed becomes your most trusted compass. The whispers you once silenced now shape your path, and the universe once distant and random begins to mirror your truth back to you. Not always in loud affirmations, but in synchronicities, in the soft arrival of what is meant. in the quiet absence of what is not. Life no longer needs to be forced. It begins to unfold with the grace of someone no longer fighting against themselves. Even your past is transfigured, no longer a weight to be carried. It becomes a sacred text filled with symbols and teaching. The wounds that once shamed you are now altars, portals through which you return to yourself. You do not erase the pain, you integrate it. You do not run from the darkness, you illuminate it with your own light. And in doing so, you realize your life was never about achievement, perfection, or performance. It was always about remembrance, about coming home. And so you stop striving. You start blooming, not loudly, not for attention, but the way a tree reaches toward the sun, not to be seen but simply because that is its nature. You no longer perform, you embody. You no longer beg to be understood. You rest in the understanding of your own soul. The world may not always mirror this transformation, but you no longer need it to, because what once felt like exile has now become sacred solitude. What once felt like a crisis is now revealed as initiation. What once felt like confusion is now clarity in disguise. This is what Jung called individuation, the path not of becoming someone new, but of becoming more deeply who you already are, the soul's unfolding, layer by layer, truth by truth, until what remains is not a perfected image, but a living essence. Your essence, unshakable, uncompromised, undeniably yours. Here at Fearless Thoughts, we celebrate this journey of becoming, providing insights and inspiration to help you embrace your unique essence and live a life of authentic fulfillment. And if something in these words stirs recognition within you, it is not because I have said something new. It is because your soul has always known this path. Living your truth is not something to be taught. It is something to be remembered. A homecoming, a return to what has always been waiting beneath the noise. And so, take this breath as an initiation. Let it remind you that your unfolding is sacred, your becoming is enough, and your presence, exactly as it is the medicine the world so desperately needs. Allow me to reiterate, you are enough. Embrace your journey with fearless thoughts. Are you ready to continue this journey of fearless self-discovery and embrace the authentic life that's waiting for you? Don't let this moment pass. Subscribe to Fearless Thoughts, hit that notification bell, and join our community dedicated to truth, transformation, and unwavering inner courage. Share your own fearless step towards authenticity in the comments below. We'll meet you in the next video as we continue becoming who we were always meant to be. Join the Fearless Thoughts community, where we will embark on a path of authenticity and rediscover the power within you.